Rose McGowan joins us now, along with Rosemary Reed, the co-creator of The Power of Women. Good morning to both of you.
Morning.
Thanks very much for coming in.
Morning.
And actually, we were talking about it because it's not like Sadie was interviewing you. As we said, it's you were both there in conversation. When you heard about this idea and were approached to do it, what made you think, yeah, I absolutely want to seize this? Because it's a whole different selection of women, isn't it? Put together in certain pairings, and just a conversation to find out where it leads to.
I love free-form conversation, and I think the viewer gets a lot more out of that, too. It's an organic, free-flowing back and forth, and you don't know where you're going to start, and you don't know where you're going to end up, and that's what's beautiful about it.
And I know, you obviously, Sadie was talking to you there about what happened, but how was it in that different format? When you're having a discussion, did you feel like it was a different approach to it?
It was a different approach to it, and The Power of Women, what's cool about that is that, power doesn't just come, it's not a power-mad thing, and it's not like I am so powerful, but a conversation has power, words have power, and emotion has power. And to transmit that back and forth with somebody who's equally as interesting is a pretty cool thing.
What I thought was interesting, I mean, we were reading all the notes about you last night, and I was going to ask you quite a few questions about Weinstein because his trial is starting, but you said this morning, you told our producers that this is one of the days, actually, you just don't feel like talking about him. And I thought that was... And so we won't ask you any detailed questions about that. But I was interested by that because it demonstrates that when you've been through an experience of the kind you did, and it's led to what's happened, I mean, a global story and a global scandal, and here we go, the trial about to start. We think of people like you as being in a kind of a solid state. You've reached a point after what happened, allegedly happened, and that you're in a kind of a settled state. But clearly you're not. Clearly the emotions still ebb and flow. You have good days and you have bad days. You don't reach a point of stability.
I've reached a point of stability in my own life, but it's also like you wouldn't want your life necessarily to be defined by someone that hurt you. It doesn't...
They're not worth that.
They're not worth that, And I think so many of us have our own kind of demon in our lives, and it's not worth that. And fighting to keep your equilibrium and your mind intact, it's... People often forget that they'll ask me these questions, they forget there's, like, a human behind it. And some days, some days it's fine, and some days it's not. It's a very unusual... The whole thing is super unusual, let's be real. It's not a normal...
And, of course, just turning to you, talking about Weinstein, the whole thing sinks into this legal morass. And now we've got the hearing in the States where he's saying, I can't get a fair trial in New York. New York is against me, so I need to be heard upstate somewhere or somewhere rural. I need to be out of this bubble. And the whole thing moves increasingly away from what it's about to the allegations of assault and repeated allegations of assault and repeat assaults, and into a kind of a legal morass. That must be, for people who are so committed to what you are, that must be disappointing, that bit by bit the issue becomes buried in legal arguments and paperwork and red tape.
Definitely. The show, The Power of Women, likes to tell real stories, and here, like with Rose, the way she went into her personal life experiences with Sadie gives a different slant. There isn't an interviewer, there isn't a journalist, so their guards are completely down, and they don't be asked awkward questions such, with a journalist. For me, I mean, you're referring to what happened with Rose, so that's completely different about the show, what we're doing. But talking in the series, hearing women's stories that aren't just directed at, again, about the Weinstein situation. With all the different women that we had on the show, I wanted to show women who had been successful in their own right. It was not the Me Too movement. It wasn't about anything to do with negativity towards men. It was about women's stories.
No, I've noticed that.
Yes.
You're not bashing men, per se.
Why would I?
No, exactly.
I'm a director, producer who makes TV shows. This just happened to be about women and inspirational women. It wasn't women that were not in any of the conversations. Did any of the women poke men in the eye? It was actually quite the opposite.
Have you actually had to edit carefully? Have you had women saying things which may be true, but which you simply can't air because...
We'd air anything.
Really?
I would have said we didn't cut anything out. It was honesty, as I say, and all the women had full editorial rights on the show, and not one of them asked to use any of that. But for me, having so much conversation with, you see a lot of women today on TV, whether it be in their own rights, reality shows, whether it be certain shows, you see a certain type of female influencing young women, and I wanted to show other side of women who should be influencing.
Can I ask you both this question?
Yeah.
If equality, true equality in the West for women is 100%, yeah, where are we at now?
Good question. I would say we're at a solid 67%.
Is that all? Really? What do you
Is that
think?
what you'd say as well?
67?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's about 67% from what I've heard.
And that's, by the way, for white women.
Yeah.
Yeah, OK. Well, that's we can go into...
That's separate, but you can't really take one without the other. So because I can only answer for...
But you notice I qualified the question by saying in the West.
Yeah.
Feminism is still very much in its infancy in the East, isn't it?
Very much so. It's more about, you know, I mean, my work is all about trying to get men and women to see each other as humans. Yeah. And more like, can a man see a woman as human, and can a woman see a man as human? And then we can actually get past all the gender stuff once we can actually figure out that our likes are a lot more similar than we know. And I think equality comes from when it's like, oh, they're not that different. We do have the same goals. We do have the same aspirations. We do have the same wants and desires, you know, and hopes.
And do you feel proud when you see how far some people have come and how...
Definitely.
You know...
Yeah.
How much you notice attitudes changing. There must, I'm sure, be frustration because we've still got a certain amount to go. What's your overriding kind of feeling about just how far we've travelled?
I think I'd say within the last 2 years, we've come a solid 10% forward.
Which is amazing,
Which is
isn't
huge.
it? I know there are big
That's a
steps
huge
to be going.
cultural shift.
Will
But
we ever...
any of the all the shows we did, not one of the women, and we've had some very powerful women on the series, not one gave any digs to men, how they, you know, stopped their career from going ahead. It was about them and their determination. There was no negativity. It's all really positive.
It's funny, I look at my own wife's, particularly her career curve.
Yes.
She's a TV presenter like me. And she was the first female face on camera at Anglia Television, which is one of our regional companies in this country, back in the 1970s. The first woman to be allowed on camera.
Wow.
Up until then, there were plenty of candidates for jobs to be reporters who were women, but they weren't allowed on screen because somehow men were seen, we're talking 40 years ago, but men were seen as the rightful heirs of the look down the lens. You know?
All this, there was always a pairing, it was always men were the front people. But that has changed, for goodness sake. It's gone.
Obviously. I mean, you know, Charlotte's the senior presenter here, you know.
Indeed,
very much
indeed. Or
Charlotte.
Alex Crawford, who's in our show, you know.
And yours, Pip.
And Pip. But you know what I do think...
Give you back to me.
Well, I've got to face the guests. I can only apologise. Can I ask you?
But is it going to... Are we ever going to get to a situation where we are all equal, where we can sort of shed the skin of everything that's gone before? How hard is it to do that? How long
I
is
think
it going to take?
I think we're already
Rose?
nearly there.
I don't know how long it's going to take, but we all have to fight the good fight. And wouldn't it be great to get to a day where we don't have to fight anymore?
We don't even think about it.
Yeah,
exactly.
We just get to exist.
Very quickly, this is just a name and a sentence explaining why, but if you could hang a medal for the greatest achievement for feminism in this country, or no, never mind, in the West again, who would it be and why? Who would you hang the medal over for being the most influential feminist of our age?
Difficult, isn't it?
OK, that's all right.
I really have no idea.
Have a think about it. We'll read it out later.
I would say Helena Kennedy for me.
The barrister?
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's on your programme tonight, isn't she?
And also Gloria Allred, but Helena Kennedy, without a doubt. She's just... She's a legend.
Well, that's made her bank holiday.
Oh. No, you know Helena, she's amazing.
So, listen, the first one's on this evening, isn't it?
Indeed.
Sky Arts at 10 o'clock, and then Youre is coming up soon with Sadie Frost in a couple of weeks' time. Really look forward to it. I mean, what a fascinating thing. I know you've kind of had a whole group of just really interesting, inspirational women, so...
You've said it, inspirational women, to inspire other women.
We aim to inspire.
Inspire.
Thanks both very much.
Thanks a lot for coming, both of you. Cheers.
Thank you very much.